Working with brake fluid, do not wipe your eyes with brake fluid on your hands. Okay? It's spicy. Alright, let's fill this all the reservoirs. Let's fill these reservoirs with some fluid. Because my master cylinders are under the dash, and as you can see, they're not super convenient, but at the same time, we all know that yes, the master cylinders are bench bled, but there's probably air that probably worked its way up, and it's kind of in this part of the system, not necessarily at the calipers and whatnot. So I rigged up this kind of deal, and over time, this has, we'll say, helped to bleed out the air whenever it's close to the master cylinders, being that the master cylinders are the highest point for the clutch and for the brakes and stuff. Now, I will definitely come out and say I don't think this is absolutely foolproof, but it's worked for my car and my custom setup. So this is probably not the best example to follow. But anyways, this is basically the cap, and you just, it'll seal onto the top of the reservoir, and then you fill this with fluid, and then you do the vacuum pump, and as you actuate the brake pedal, it's going to displace, it's going to pull the air from the reservoir, and it will fill fluid into its place. So it's it works, and let's go ahead and get this done for all three. All right, so I know there's gonna be people who ask, what's going on? Why is this so custom? All that good stuff. Well, it's custom because I put this thing together. And that's not, I'm not a professional car builder. But anyways, I digress. Anyways, so there's my special vacuum cap going to the tube into here, which goes to a little handheld vacuum pump. So before I got started, my clutch pedal, and you can watch the, see, now we rolling, right? Because when I push that down and I'm in first gear, you know, we're now disengaged. But this is what I'm doing for my clutch master cylinder, and I'm going to do it for the same two guys over here. So that's taking this pump and pump it on up. You can see it's pulling out little air bubbles. Now, I'm pretty confident I've got all the air bubbles out, but those air bubbles that you're seeing is probably the air bubbles that are like on top of the reservoir without it being, you know, absolutely full to the brim, right? So you've got vacuum here. Now, when I'm pumping the pedal to try and get all the air out, what ends up happening is as I push clutch down, that temperature, you see it ticks down because, oh, make sure I don't hit back my garage. It ticks down because what's happening is it's pulling air out. And it's pulling air out and relieving pressure. But what's happening is when you let an air bubble out, there's fluid that's being put back into its place. That's how I imagined it. If someone knows exactly what's going on and how and why this works, I'm definitely open to have my mind blown. So clutch down, and as you can see, we're gonna roll. Boom. So before we move it on to the next master cylinder, something that you should always do when you are doing this kind of work is brand new tubing. I'm looking at this master cylinder. This is dry, so this part right here is dry, so that means that tubing is sealing. And then let's go check under the engine bay. And the engine bay is the same way. So this is our clutch, because we just did the clutch. Yeah, that feels all nice and dry. So we're getting some pressure and things bled up. It looks like we done got a leak on our front master cylinder, which is the tubing that's pretty much to the far right in the camera view. So it looks like it's leaking kind of out of that kind of little inverted flare conversion fitting. So I need to see if I can't tighten that down, or I gotta somehow drop this assembly down again. So let's see if we can fit. Finding a leak. So if you take a look at that rag, I have not touched it, but if you look at it, obviously we are leaking from the bottom part of that little union right there. So let's go ahead and get the wrenches and tighten that on up, and then we'll keep on going to make sure that we are not leaking a gross amount of fluid onto the out of that brake master cylinder. Clutch, rear brakes. Gotta knock out the last one, which is the front brakes. And we got this thing shifting and stopping, and hopefully it's going to stop even better with the new brake master cylinder strategy. Hopefully we get much stronger brake pressure to get that nice, good, strong bite, and then we can trail off as we kind of go into the turns with the car and the suspension settled up and things like, and reduce down to speed and stuff like that. So, all right, one last master cylinder. Okay, so let's test out these brakes, I guess, right? So, neutral. Ooh, it's been a while. Turn signal guy back in here. If I can find it. Ah, there we go. Alright. So, neutral. Crank this up. We got oil pressure. All right. I was holding the brake down. I wanted to make sure we were good. Ooh, that smells. Let's go investigate that. Oh. going nowhere. Oh. Whew, that smells. Oh. Yeah. I got. That's exactly what it is. There's a brake fluid that got onto the header because when we were bleeding it and all that good stuff. So. Yeah. Ugh. Gross. Stuff smells. Alright, I think I'm gonna call that one a done deal because I just did a couple tests about rolling forward, hitting the brake real hard. It definitely has enough brake pressure to kill the engine. You know, if I slowly let out the clutch, the engine is unable to overpower the pressure that the brake's causing, which that means, I mean, I know it doesn't mean a lot, but at the same time, it does mean that if I go drive the car on the road for our little street testing, which I'm not going to do that tonight. I'm going to do it during the day, probably tomorrow, but what I was getting at was being that it has enough brake pressure to stall the engine. That means I have enough brake pressure to stop the car, which is good. So we want that. We want to be able to stop the car. That's the whole point of this. So as you guys saw, we got the dash all put together. We got the turn signal, the steering wheel adjustment. Probably need to clean out the car a little bit, but for the most part, everything seems to be good. There's a little smoke coming from the hood. That was brake fluid that got on the header started burning off. So that's, hopefully that'll clear up. I'm pretty sure, usually it does. That's one of those sort itself out kind of things. But yeah, everything's back together. Pretty excited to drive the car. All right. Thank you guys for watching. Go ahead and hit a like, subscribe, comment.